Live from WRCT Studios in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the Total Education Hour, the talk shop for teachers, parents, and administrators. Here's your host of the show, Neil Haley, the Total Tutor.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Total Education Hour. I am so exhausted again this week. Things have been just so busy. It's not let up. Please go to my website at totaltutor.org to find out more information on the Total Education Network. We just are in so many areas, syndicated about 36 stations. I should be telling you a few more that are going to be set up pretty soon. Go to the website, check it out. I also own a birth through college tutoring and consulting company. My studio is a little quieter today, only one co-host, but also I have television cameras in here, so it's an awesome time and great time. And I want to welcome to the program Darcy Hyman, my educational consultant. Darcy, thanks for coming to the program.
Hey, Neil, thanks for having me on.
All right, and our first guest, and I tell you, his resume is amazing, and if you are thinking about being a writer, especially a sports writer, you have to listen to this segment. I'd like to welcome to the program Bill Chastain. Bill, thanks for calling the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
And Bill, our topic today is talking about your journalism career. It's an amazing career. And what made you want to become a writer?
You know, I didn't really identify it till I got out of college. I didn't go to journalism school. I went to Georgia Tech, so I studied industrial management, and that's what I got my degree in. But it just was, I feel lucky. I always liked to read books. And when I was in college, I actually missed reading a lot because it was more of technical stuff and them telling you what to read and that. You know, everybody goes through that in college. But I finally figured out that, you know, the two could pair up, that I enjoyed writing and I enjoyed reading. And, you know, that just seemed to be the perfect marriage. And I kind of got into it the backwards way. I back in the day, you know, this is early 80s, I would do freelance writing. And basically what would happen is I would, you know, write letters to any magazine, and you would try to sell your ideas, and you'd get, you know, maybe 5 out of 100 would be accepted, and then you would end up parlaying those into bigger magazines, and, you know, until you've made some progression, and that's really how it kind of got started.
All right. Well, I think that you have to look at your break and find out what your passion is, and it seems like what you were doing before just wasn't your passion. You said, hey, I got to move on to something that I really enjoy, and you had to kind of break in. It wasn't like overnight you were having success, and we're going to learn more about that in a second.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you've had over 20 years of experience being a journalist, and I really want to know, why did you pick sports? A lot of times journalists have a little bit of trouble figuring out what exactly it is that they want to cover because there are so many interesting things. What drew you to sports?
Well, actually, I mean, I've always been a sports fanatic, and, you know, even when I was a kid, I was always the first one to grab the sports page. You know, from 9 years old, I was the first one to grab the Sports Illustrated, and it was just somehow, for me, the way I'm wired, it was just everything I read about sports just stuck in my memory. So, you know, it was reading, and, you know, everything I did, I just seemed to absorb. So that you know, kind of added up and really kind of went in harmony with the other stuff. Although later I learned that a lot of times that gets you in trouble when you know a lot about something and you don't look it up. You know, you think you know, and the older you get, the more that'll haunt you.
Especially when you're interviewing athletes or different things and questioning something that they did, and they'll say, well, did you play that sport? And it's the kind of situation I dealt with when I was a professional wrestler, and then they have these magazines that will write up things on people, and they would say, but have you ever been in the ring? So I'm sure you heard those types of things as well with athletes saying, how are you being critical about me? So research is a very important thing. So you talked about being a freelance writer in the 80s. When did you get like your first big break? How did it happen?
I think my first real big break was the man, his name is John Kunster, and I actually dedicated, I've got a book coming out in January about Hack Wilson's 191 RBI season, and it's with Lions Press. And I actually dedicated the book to him, and I said thanks for the beginning. John was the editor or managing editor of Baseball Digest, and that was the first national magazine that I ever had an article in. So, and he continued to use me some as well. But, I mean, that was, you know, a big confidence boost. And, you know, once you break through and start getting some things published, it really, you know, makes you feel good and gives you some energy. And something I really liked about writing, and I've always enjoyed about it, too, was it's always seemed like I could look back and I feel like I've made progress. You know, you can look and it's tangible where you can see, you know, like if I looked at something I wrote back in 1982, you know, I could say I would have changed this, or this. And so it feels like I'm making progress all the time. And I think that's a rewarding feeling.
Oh, it's definitely a rewarding feeling. And again, finding that big break, you kind of tested the waters by being that freelance writer and saying, I'm going to take those chances till I finally make it. And you didn't give up. And then you finally had your big break, and it really led to the next big part of your career. And I mean, I know so many people want your job. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's probably, you know, 100,000 people who want my job at MLB.com, and you know, probably a lot of them could do it well too. But I do have, you know, over the years, you know, you do kind of realize that you've gained some knowledge over the years, and you do have a lot of contacts and that kind of thing, and it all just kind of adds up after a while.
Yes, it definitely does. Networking is a huge thing. It definitely is.
Oh, it absolutely is. I know we're talking about the extensive experience that you have now, but was there anything as a child that told you that this is what you wanted to do, or what was it that you really dreamed about doing when you were a kid?
You know, that's one of those things. Well, of course, I was, you know, always playing sports, and I always dreamed about being a professional athlete. Unfortunately, the hamstrings never grew. But you know, that's one thing you notice when you cover sports is generally the guys with the hamstrings are the ones who are the athletes. But I just don't think I always have felt fortunate that I was able to identify it at a fairly early age, because I think a lot of people, and I hadn't gotten too comfortable in a job yet to where I was making a lot of money and I couldn't really take a chance on it, you know, because it's very hard once you start making a lot of money to go backwards.
Yes.
So that's always been something I was lucky about. And but as far as identifying it, I was until I got out of college, because I didn't even know how to type when I was in college.
Wow.
So, again, that's a thing where you never know what you're going to end up being. Bill, I don't think when I was a kid I would thought I'd been a teacher and then go on and own a tutoring company and really be dedicated to education. Education wasn't really my big thing. So you also have to look at, sometimes you grow in that passion and you see that your direction's taking you somewhere else, but it still led to your love of sports. So after you met John, the big break, what would you say that big job that led you to really covering being a beat writer with Major League Baseball and stuff? Was that the big thing?
Well, it's kind of an odd story, but the Tampa Tribune, I actually did some work for a while for the St. Petersburg Times. I was with the St. Petersburg Times and the Evening Independent, which was their afternoon paper. And actually that was very good training for the way the business went, because particularly in sports, in the older days of sports, you would write your stories and have to have them in by 10:30, and there wasn't as much television, so you were telling them more about what happened in the game.
Right.
You know, play by play almost. It kind of evolved, and then the afternoon papers would kind of focus in on one aspect of the game, and it was more of a feature type story. So that afternoon paper training kind of gave me a good afternoon paper experience, kind of gave me good training for the way the business went, because the morning paper started going that way too, because there's so much television, you got to give your audience something they can't get on television. But so I had that experience with St. Petersburg Times and Evening Independent, and then I went back to just freelancing for a while, and then I wanted to get in the newspaper business back in it, and there actually was a guy in this area in Tampa got arrested for cocaine. He got one of the sports writers at the Tribune, and it was just the worst possible time for it to happen, because the Tribune had just had a reporter who had been down in South America, and he'd gotten murdered by some people in the drug trade. And so it was, you know, no tolerance whatsoever. I'm not even sure the guy that got fired that made the place for me, you know, really had due process. But, you know, I wasn't at the Tribune at the time, so I'm not really sure of that. But anyway, that let me in the door there at night, and that was like 1990. And having come from the freelance background at the time, you know, where everything I wrote was, you know, I had to do a query letter to get anything, you know, get a story. I was in hog heaven all of a sudden. Everything I wanted to write, I could write, you know. So here I was. I started out and just, you know, it was it felt just like a day at the park for me, because I was writing everything I wanted when I wanted, and it really helped me progress, or make an impact or get noticed at the start.
That's great, and having that opportunity, you never know when those doors open up. It's such an important thing to be ready for it when it happens.
Right, exactly. I know you've done a lot of research and a lot of interviews. Who do you think is the most interesting person you've either had to research or have gotten to interview?
That's a pretty interesting question, because, I have been around a lot of sports, and, I think one good aspect of interviewing people who are famous is you kind of get a little more immune to that. You're not really starstruck by it. So I think one of the most interesting ones I ever interviewed was a catcher for the Blue Jays named Pat Borders. And part of it was he lives in Lake Wales, Florida, which is just outside of Tampa. And it was so funny because I always kind of thought he was just kind of like a rube, He was a country boy, and, everybody knows more than him. So this guy had actually been the MVP of the '92 World Series, I believe, for Toronto.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When he was the catcher for Toronto. But so he has me out there to come out and see him. This during the off season, and here I was, the way I thought about it before I went out there. I get out there. He says, come park at my house because I'm gonna take you out in the groves. This guy was out. He takes me out in his pickup, and he's got like a zucchini farm out here, and he's like, just making all kinds of money growing zucchini in what used to be a orange grove, and he had to understand this drip feeder system to get his crops wet enough, to grow in that environment. And here he was, this guy. I think, you never underestimate somebody. That was my lesson there.
Right.
But he was extremely interesting, and he'd taken care of all of his money. In fact, he said, I'm going to take you out to lunch that day. So we went by his parents' house, and they had tacos. This guy's married and he's got like 8 kids, but we go by his parents' house where they'd eaten tacos the night before, and they had leftover tacos. So we ate leftover tacos at his house. But it was just, I just thought it was one of the great experiences because of what I thought going in, and this guy was just, was just a really funny thing to me.
Well, Bill, I mean, I was talking to your publicist a day ago, and I said, you know what, one topic just on journalism, there's so much more. You wrote many different books. Where can we find more information on you? But I'd love to have you back on some of these other topics as well that you've covered in your career.
Well, I do have a website via the Authors Guild, which is BillChastain.com. And you can always read my stuff on MLB.com. Actually, either go to MLB.com and you can pan onto the Rays, or you can go RaysBaseball.com, and that'll take you right there. So.
All right. Well, Bill, it was an honor. Thank you for calling the program, and you have very interesting stories, so we definitely will have you back again, okay?
Thanks. I'd welcome it.
All right. That was Bill Chastain, beat writer for MLB.com. You're listening to Total Education Hour on the Total Education Network. We'll be back in just a moment.
Crowd you want to.
And now, another adventure with Savings Man.
Let's live at the beach.
Let's golf every day.
How about a trip?
Season baseball tickets.
Sounds like you're planning for retirement.
Hey, Savings Man.
Are you saving enough?
We are, thanks to the easy ballpark estimate worksheet at choosetosave.org.
Hope you're saving for health insurance.
Absolutely, because health insurance is important. Thanks, Savings Man.
No, thank you.
So visit choosetosave.org and get your ballpark estimate today.
Get up to a 100% scholarship to college and up to $60,000 in assistance. Get paid to learn valuable job skills. Maybe make an extra 20 grand when you join. All while you serve your community and your country. Learn more at NationalGuard.com.
There comes a time in life when you need government information,
and you just don't know which way to turn.
USA.gov.
Find your Social Security benefits online.
USA.gov.
Our list of jobs will put you on cloud
for a used minivan anytime.
USA.gov. It's government made easy for the people. USA.gov.
You know that it kills me. There's so much I want to say.
We're back to the Till Education Hour on the Till Education Network. Go to realmsofmusic.com. A lot of those great independent artists will be there. I want to welcome to the program another honor. It's amazing. The guests that Darcy we've been interviewing have been amazing. But I would like to welcome Dr. Moore to the program. You're president of Los Angeles City College. Thanks for calling the program.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, Dr. Moore, when I see this topic, there's a lot of controversy in this topic, especially for your book, Affirmative Action, because we're running into the situation where lots of people are saying that this shouldn't be done. This is the wrong thing to do. And just based on certain circumstances, it happens that way. It's not like it's maybe on a case-by-case basis that it might be not the right thing. We can't eliminate this because this is a very important thing.
Yes, and you're absolutely correct. Affirmative action, the term does usually bring about a lot of controversy, but the manner in which I wrote my book and, talking about college admissions, I'm talking about a specific area, that of higher education. And, affirmative action done correctly really is about bringing about equity in areas where historically there has not been equity. And in my book, that's why I talk about the fact that you can have affirmative action in all walks, not just that based upon color.
And that's such an important thing because a lot of times you're looking at a situation where sometimes some people fall through the cracks, but it's such an important thing because you can't have it where we're not looking at all different nationalities and people to get into college. We can't rule out people, and sometimes based on environment, based on situations, we have to give them that opportunity. And it frustrates me beyond belief when I hear that it has to be eliminated completely.
I couldn't agree with you more. But I think also, too, for your listeners, it's important that when we talk about the term affirmative action, we kind of give a little bit of background or put it into context. In that of college admissions and what I wrote about in my book, the phrase that's always kind of left out in this whole situation is that of eligibility. I've always advocated for it, and the issue of affirmative action should deal with people who are eligible. So first and foremost, eligibility means that they meet all of the regular requirements, that of GPA and courses that have been taken for admissions. And so when you talk about the context of affirmative action, I'm talking about it making reference to students who are eligible but are looking at populations, and this is also along gender lines, that historically have been underrepresented.
That's such a great point. I love hearing the eligibility factor because if you were speaking upon this, Dr. Moore, in the whole affirmative action movement, they would say, oh, that's great. Okay, they're qualified. A lot of times they're not qualified, and it's only a few. It's a minority of people that happens to, but it gives affirmative action a horrible name based on that.
It does, and that's why I also say if you're talking about people who are not eligible, that's not affirmative action. That's not what the federal government set up. I mean, remember at the time in which affirmative action was needed and still is needed, the historical basis where, they were closing the doors to women, to people of color, to those who are Jewish. So, the affirmative action, using it in the right and appropriate context as that outlined by the federal government there's still a need for it. And we're talking about individuals who are qualified but who historically have been denied an opportunity.
And I never heard that definition. Again, certain people paint a different picture from that. So you're really educating me today, Dr. Moore.
Yeah, I want to ask you, could you possibly, just to kind of help our listeners out a little bit, could you possibly give us maybe 2 or 3 main points of what exactly you would like to see done?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to see done is, with regards to affirmative action, I think, the challenge that we have is that we're in such a social media dynamic. Everybody wants something in a 30-second soundbite. When you have a complex issue like this, it really would be wonderful for folks to be able to always have access to an FAQ, frequently asked questions. What I'd like to see done is more information put into the context of where people can understand it, first and foremost. Secondly, that we talk about access and the issue of race, and that it's not about something that is always negative or doesn't have to be negative, but we're talking about giving opportunities to people. And most importantly, I think, universities and institutions need to provide clear-cut information on their criteria for admissions and access and make that available on their website and begin to really educate the general public, especially people who want access to their institutions. And we need to stop being afraid to have the conversation about race in public settings because, you know, our country has a bad history about it. It doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case.
I love what you're talking about, and we need to get you out there all the time talking about this because your book is really painting that picture to say, you know what, we are not trying to say that certain people should get an advantage if they're not qualified.
Exactly.
And qualified is the key component. Like when we're hearing about different people saying free college for everyone, we need free college for people who are qualified to go to college. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. I mean, when you talk about access, you want to make sure that access equals success. And so what we're talking about in the sense that there is still a need for affirmative action, but for affirmative action defined and appropriately used, we're talking about people who otherwise would not have an opportunity if they don't have access to education or an ability to get an education so they can earn a living wage. We're talking about affirmative action in the sense of people who are qualified, who meet the criteria for admissions to the institution, but historically have not been represented. For example, you can have affirmative action for males in nursing programs. You can have affirmative action for women in engineering and architectural programs. Historically, they have not been represented. What happens is the term gets lost in the 30-second soundbite,
right,
along with people feeling uncomfortable about the issue of race or that of gender, that individuals don't want to have a real conversation about the continued inequities that exist in our society that require the need for affirmative action from the historical perspective.
Well spoken. I mean, in this whole, how you're giving the soundbite in a right way and educating people on affirmative action, what it was meant to be. And I have one other question before Darcy, because this is kind of egging at me in a way. Why is it that it is being abused? And that leads to a bad connotation of affirmative action. Can you give me the kind of history in your end why we're seeing certain colleges that don't use the qualified component just to use affirmative action and admit people that aren't really qualified?
Well, you know, that's a good question, but it's a complex one because college admissions, and you know, when you talk about academic freedom, institutional freedoms, that it can be a little complex. I don't know, I don't have the answer to the why because, you know, we're not in the room when they make those types of decisions.
Right.
But I would have to say, I would speculate that, you know, people are not using the policy appropriately because for whatever reason there may be other pressures. There may be a need because this person's really good at one thing versus the other person, and we want to make sure that you know, the institution's going to have what it needs. When we talk about affirmative action not being used appropriately, we're not just talking about people who are of color, being that of black or brown. We've had cases where institutions are using affirmative action because they want to build up their athletic team. Not that I'm trying to say that, you know, that's what everyone is doing, but you know, we have had cases, there have been institutions without a doubt that have not used the policy appropriately. And what I advocate for is that, first of all, we need to educate ourselves about it, but that we need to use it correctly because using it inappropriately is not affirmative action. It's just giving somebody access where they may not need it or where they're not going to be successful. That's not affirmative action, and people sometimes confuse the two or they put it under that criteria, and that's not appropriate.
That's a great point. Why don't we get on these universities that are admitting student athletes that really shouldn't be in there? I'm not using affirmative action at all, Dr. Moore. They're looking at, hey, they can play football or they can play basketball. They're admitted to a school where they they're not even qualified to be they're not even qualified to be on the campus. And you're right, maybe they're using the affirmative action in that way, and that's definitely a good point.
Yeah, and so what's happened is affirmative action gets a bad name. It gets a bad rep, but I'll say to folks, that's not affirmative action. If you're letting a kid in and they don't have the right SAT score, they don't meet the cutoff, or they don't have the right grades, and you're letting them in just for other reasons, that's not affirmative action.
Right, exactly. Definitely, that's not.
Yeah, exactly. And I would love for you to talk maybe a little bit more about where you see the future of affirmative action going. Like, where do you think we will be in 10, 20, 30, 40 years?
I think in 10, 20, 30 years, we'll still have a need for affirmative action, and in the sense of, because if you look, in the sense of the historical perspective. And what I mean by that is people who are historically underrepresented. Because let's take, for example, the state of California does not have had a female governor. Places where, in 2011 and 2012 and maybe 2015 and 2016, we still have an opportunity to have a first in any magnitude, to me, speaks to a need for affirmative action. So I think because we still have those dynamics that are out there, not to mention the fact that we don't seem to have the type of access to resources and outcomes and education that we need, that I think you'll find that we still have that historical gap. So therefore there will still be some sort of need. I can't tell you specifically what it will be, but if you can look around and say, but this is the first person who has ever held this position, this is the first female, this is the first African American, this is the first Latina, then we still do need in certain realms a need for affirmative action, because it's trying to provide opportunities where historically they have not existed.
Fantastic point. I completely agree with you, and I think that the only way we're going to be able to do this is get the word out, tell people how it's really doing it. How are you educating people on this?
Well, first of all, I would encourage, if your listeners are not familiar with my book, I would encourage them to go out and get it, Race and College Admissions, at McFarland Publishing or at Amazon. That's one way. I think the other thing that I'm doing in my work in education is, telling the story, making sure you're educating people about what's happening. I mean, I'm a product of affirmative action. Without affirmative action, I would not have gone to college. But I came out of high school with a 3.75 GPA. I mean, but I was the first in my family to obtain my education beyond 12th grade. I mean, to go all the way and become Dr. Moore. So I feel really fortunate. Yes. But had it not been for affirmative action and access to resources, I would not have had that. So I think what we're trying to do and what I'm trying to do first and foremost is just to educate people about what affirmative action really is, and in the federal context of how it's supposed to be used, and to try and get the word out that it's not a 30-second soundbite of giving an unearned privilege to a person of color that's taking something away from someone else. That's not affirmative action.
No, that's not. And how we can stop that in about 30 seconds, how would you stop it? What way would you do it? You said educating them, but what about also going to the other university admissions offices and make sure that this doesn't happen anymore?
Well, I think, there in a 30-second soundbite, I would say we could use the social media to begin to put the soundbite out there about what affirmative action is. I think, secondly, because under the eyes of federal government, those institutions that are receiving any type of federal financial aid, they have a requirement and obligation to make sure that they are educating their students about this policy. They're educating their staff about this policy. So I think, it goes into that realm of a responsibility by those universities and institutions on how they really are utilizing their admissions and how they are implementing affirmative action in that. They're required to share that information with folks.
Well, thanks a lot for calling the program, Dr. Moore, and I really will want to have you back when you tell me what's going on, your new initiatives to try to push this forward. You really are a great spokesperson for this, and I think that we need to get the word out that affirmative action is a good thing if it's done right, and that's what your talk is, and I appreciate you calling.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the program, and once again, I encourage your listeners and folks to go out and grab the book, Race and College Admissions.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Dr. Moore.
You.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. That was Dr. Moore, president of Los Angeles City College. You're listening to the Total Education Hour, the Total Education Network. We'll be back in just a moment.
And now, another adventure with Savings Man.
Let's live at the beach.
Let's golf every day.
How about a trip?
Season baseball tickets?
Sounds like you're planning for retirement.
Hey, Savings Man.
Are you saving enough?
We are, thanks to the Easy Ballpark Estimate Worksheet at ChooseToSave.org.
Hope you're saving for health insurance.
Absolutely, because health insurance is important. Thanks, Savings Man.
No, thank you.
So visit ChooseToSave.org and get your ballpark estimate today.
What do we have here?
You take Medicare, don't you?
Sure.
And you probably have a lot of patients who are ready to go on Medicare, yes?
Yes.
You could tell them that if they're 65, they can go to socialsecurity.gov and apply for Medicare online. It takes less time than sitting in a doctor's office. It's less than 10 minutes. It's quite easy.
President Roosevelt signs Bill of Rights.
I've always appreciated the American Legion.
My gratitude to the American Legion.
Thank you all of the American Legion.
Well, we have millions of veterans that are members of our organization.
Thank you.
The American Legion, celebrating a legacy of service to America. Find out more at legion.org.
We're back to the Total Education Hour, the Total Education Network. This is Neil Haley, the Total Tutor. One thing I wanted to tell my listeners out there saying, maybe they listened to this summer. The direction our show is going is really a talk show format. This is the place in education. This is where you want to be on the Total Education Hour, syndicated on 36 stations. If you're in education, you need to be on this program. And you have to be on this program, and we'll make sure you'll be on it at one point in time. Darcy, one point I wanted to talk about when the doctor mentioned the whole thing about sports. The NCAA now has raised the minimum GPA for incoming students to what? Drum roll. From 2.0 to 2.3.
Oh, just barely failing.
Oh, and Darcy, I don't want to make any comments, especially on the Big East. But I think that certain state colleges are going to be in a lot of trouble now, to get those great athletes to win because they have to increase that GPA by 0.3%. Let's work on it. Let's go ahead and do it. I think that they could do it, especially schools like, I won't mention them because, again, I have a station in that area. So I've learned my lesson, Darcy, on those certain facts. But do you think that's an interesting thing, this whole NCAA raising the minimum GPA?
Oh, it's about time. My goodness. Seriously.
But who's doing the schoolwork for them in high school? Did I say that? But see, here's the fact in this. We need to look at the student athlete. Mm-hmm. Not this whole thing. If they're going to go on and want to play in the NFL, go ahead and have tutors for them. Don't have them on a college campus stealing a position for somebody else. But we do have another call on the line, and I'm just really excited about this because I am a big fan of learning how to use my contacts because I've used them for, I guess, about 20 years. I'd say I got to do the math. But I'd like to welcome to the program David Bosley and Dr. Jennifer Friedman. Thanks for calling the program.
Thanks, Neil.
Oh, do we have both of them online? I didn't hear Dr. Friedman.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
There we go.
All right. So the first question I'm going to ask is, here's the thing. I have 3 little girls. One is 6, and they look like, and the others are 2.5 and 1. The one issue is, I think at one point in time, they're all going to need to go from glasses to contacts because it's a certain situation. What age do you recommend kids getting contacts?
Well, it's really about, how responsible they are and how on board the parents are. There really isn't, in a particular age. It's just all about, how responsible the child is.
How responsible. So what's the youngest age you've seen that, Dr. Friedman?
Well, myself, I would say the youngest that I've personally fit has been, maybe 12, 13. But there are people that do fit, younger children, like pediatric specialists do that.
Oh, very good. So about 12 or 13 years old. I think that's when I had it. I had to figure out the math about that. Mm-hmm. Darcy, interesting topic, right?
It is incredible, yeah. So I was actually wondering, is there any developmental issue that may come into play? I know some parents might be afraid to get their child contacts if they're too young and keep them with the glasses, but is there really anything that we need to worry about when it comes to the overall health of the child or the health of their eyes?
As far as contact lenses go, you certainly want to make sure that they're, able to understand and care for their contacts properly, or else there are, many more infections that you can get when you use contact lenses. Developmental issues can occur with kids, under the age of 12, and that can happen whether they wear glasses or contacts. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, definitely. And I think that taking care of both of them, losing your glasses, sometimes you're going to end up losing your glasses. And in contacts, we're going to end up ripping them. That's why you like the disposable kind. But, David, now, basically what I've seen a lot of times is there's not a lot of education out there for contact users. A lot of times people purchase the contacts. The doctor prescribes them. It's all set up, ready to go, and you're having your prescription of contact lenses or glasses. But there's really not any more help out there.
I totally agree with that, and I've actually seen that with my friends. And I work for 1-800-ANYLENS, and many of my friends come to me for contact advice. But the number one advice that I can give listeners is that you should definitely follow the directions of your doctor. You can't order contacts without a valid prescription, so it's not, oh, I want to try these or that brand. So everyone who gets a pair of contacts, have to be properly fitted, and at the time, that's when the doctors give them the instructions. So when you are provided those instructions, I highly recommend to follow everything that they advise.
So that's the first thing, but a lot of times it's very hard to get in touch with that doctor, and that's a big situation. Jennifer, what do you see, Dr. Jennifer Friedman, what do you see as the one of the kind of craziness of how to put contacts in and go through all these different things, especially when you're looking at a 12, 13-year-old? They make a lot of mistakes sometimes, don't they, at first when they're fitting them?
I'm sorry, can you ask that one more time?
Sure. About the fitting of contacts, how difficult it is for kids to put them in and out and clean them and all these things at about 12 and 13. What types of problems do you see occur?
Well, actually, you'd be surprised. When kids put in contacts for the first time, it's actually a lot easier to teach them how to put them in properly than it is with adults, because they're not as scared about touching their eye as adults are. So they're actually pretty easy to teach. And the fit itself, is definitely objective. So the fit isn't more difficult, and the training actually isn't more difficult. It's actually easier, but you just need to make sure the parents are there to watch, to make sure they're cleaning them and washing their hands properly before they're putting their fingers in their eye. That's the major problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if you don't wash your hands, you really end up with a lot of pain. So, David, what happens once we have these little horrific accidents or certain situations where the contacts are ripped really easily, or they're really painful to get in? I'm sure you get these phone calls probably from adults, don't you?
That is true, and occasionally, in a rare circumstance, that a contact lens will come with a slight tear in it, and you will notice immediately when you put it in your eye. It'll feel a little uncomfortable. You take it out, and if you actually closely examine, there could be a slight tear in it. But and even when you handle them a lot, it's easy to tear them, especially if you have longer fingernails. But yeah, we do hear customers calling, how can I take care of this? When you do receive a box that is with a slight tear, the manufacturers actually replace them. So we ask customers either ship it back or we just send them a free trial pair to replace those.
That's important. That's very important.
I know we're talking about the fear of putting the contacts in, but what about if your fear is taking them back out? Do you have any advice for that?
No, I mean, that definitely is, fear that most contact lens wearers have when they're, learning the first time. It just takes practice, and just be very patient, and it just takes practice. Some people it takes an hour, some people 10 minutes, and some people, a week, but we'll get there eventually.
Do you have any advice, like any techniques you would suggest to someone who is maybe a little squeamish, or maybe they're kind of afraid of getting these contacts in and out of their eyes?
I mean, like I said, it really just takes practice and patience. It's easy to learn how to do it, but actually, touching the eye and, and being patient enough to wait till you get it right. That's the best thing I can say is patience and practice.
So we're talking about these kind of little things that I think are difficult, because I remember when I first had to try to put contacts in for the first time, and I thought, oh, how cool. 12 and 13, I think I was probably 13 years old, and I'm 38 now, so I guess my whatever math I was trying to do on the fly by being a talk show host. But the situation is, David, that what happens if we're talking a 13-year-old and, they need an answer to a question. Mom and dad are doing something else, and they really want to get these contacts in because they have an important date, or they have a situation where they have to be at something important that they have to go out, and they want to look their best, and they don't want to wear their glasses. When are they available to educate people so that they can help them through this process?
Well, from customer service, we haven't really received many calls from younger people at that age, so they really are looking to their parents for their advice. But parents have called in for advice, and we always recommend that they consult their doctor. But there are basic tips that we can give people. I know my little cousin, she's 10 years old, and she wears contacts. She's fine, and she can call me anytime for advice. But again, these are serious devices, and you don't want to mess up your vision. So, consult an eye doctor for sure.
That's a great point. And so through that education process, you're able, the little things, the little hiccups. Give me another one of the hiccups of using contacts, Dr. Friedman, that makes it difficult sometimes compared to wearing glasses.
I mean, just caring for them, having to clean them every night. Some people, don't like to have to clean and remove them every night. The replacement schedule also can become too much for certain people. The increased risk of infection. There's a lot of people who, still don't like putting their finger in their eye and just can't actually get it down. Also, many people who are over 40 and need help with distance as well as reading. Sometimes contacts don't always work well for that type of patient either. So,
David, what makes your company different business-wise, customer service-wise, compared to other companies with contacts?
Customer service, I tell you, we have outstanding customer service that actually really do care about these patients out there because, vision is very important. And I will say that our company, all our contacts come direct from the manufacturer. All the lenses are FDA approved. And, given that Halloween's coming up, there's many websites, there are many Halloween stores that are selling illegal contacts. They're not FDA approved. And because, they've got a little spooky look to them, people are buying them, not thinking about the dangers, and people are out there getting infections. But, my customer service staff, they definitely stress that everything is FDA approved. We follow all the guidelines of verifying prescriptions because we will not ship any order without verifying your prescription to make sure you've got the right brand and the right fit.
And Dr. Friedman, what happens if you continue to wear contacts and not take care of them correctly? What kind of things can happen to your eyes if you do not?
You can get many different types of infections, corneal ulcers, and if they're not treated properly, they can actually lead to a permanent, vision loss.
Wow. So, and those types of signs that you see, Dr. Friedman, what kind of signs do you see from the incorrect contact use?
You would see redness, mucus discharge. Usually, a patient will feel pain, maybe itchiness, but mostly pain and redness.
Pain and redness, very, very interesting. So that people out there, especially, contacts are not the safe. It's safe, but you have to really protect yourself and make sure you're doing the right thing. And it's great that your company educates people. David, where can we find more information on you?
You can visit us on the website at 1-800-ANYLENS.com. That's 1-800-ANYLENS. Or you can call us directly at 1-800-ANYLENS. That's 1-800-269-5367.
Well, thanks for calling the program, David, and thanks, Dr. Friedman, also for chiming in.
Thanks you very much.
All right, take care. All right, that was again David Bosley and Dr. Jennifer Friedman. You're listening to the Toll Education Hour on the Toll Education Network. We'll be back in just a moment.
My name is Amanda. I'm 21 years old. I have lots of friends that use tanning beds that lay out in the sun all the time, and I tell them about Jamie. Jamie was in her early 20s when she was diagnosed with melanoma, and she died right before she turned 30. People think tanning is safe. I don't think it's safe. You could die just like Jamie did.
This message is brought to you by the American Academy of Dermatology.
You've probably seen this before. Hide and seek? Well, sort of. Kids will often withdraw when their needs aren't being met. I know. It would be easier if they just walked up and said, "Hey, I'm feeling like I need a little one-on-one time." But kids have their own language, and it's up to us parents to learn it. Once you figure out how to speak your kid's language, well, you don't really have to say much at all. A thought from the Church of Jesus Christ.
What are you doing, dear?
My finances. Every week I divide my allowance, some to spend, some to charity. But the first thing I do is set aside 10% to save for my future.
That's awfully grown up. Did you learn that in school?
No, Dad taught me. He said if you want something tomorrow, you have to save today. Dad's saving for retirement. I'm saving for a new bike.
Choose to save. To learn how to get started, get your free Power to Choose brochure.
He's a smart man, your father.
Of Latter-day Saints.
We're back to the Total Education Hour on the Total Education Network, and we just keep rolling on. Guest number 4, I want to welcome to the program, and I'm just amazed on the conversations we've been having to have a celebrity that wants to talk to me on the phone. I want to welcome to the program Claire Doden. You are a star on the Sci-Fi Network. Tell us much more about you before we get to our topic of Joan of Arc.
Hello. Thank you for having me on your show. I've been in this TV show on Spike called Deadliest Warrior, in which I am the Joan of Arc weapons expert. So it's a show. It's a fun show where we look at historical characters and we see how they would behave and what would happen if we would match them if they were having a little combat between themselves. So that was fun. So Joan of Arc was against William the Conqueror.
Okay. Darcy, question.
Yes, huge question, actually. I'm really wondering if you could tell us maybe the hardest part of trying to play a historical character, especially one that we don't really have. We have a lot of information on her, but a lot of it is kind of hearsay and recorded in ways that a lot of people have some question as to who she actually is. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the struggle that you might have had with that character.
Well, so I did some research, and I had a look at the transcripts of her trial, and I tried to put myself in her shoes, like I would like any acting job. And I think I tried to put myself, in her head and see how she would feel and how I would have felt if I was a teenager. And I believed that I needed to free France from the English invasion. It was a lot of fun, actually. It was really interesting to go there. The hardest part, I guess, was doing all the research and trying to understand where she was coming from.
That's where I want the question, because I'm a big fan of Joan of Arc, especially just from researching and things like that. What did you learn about the character that really amazed you about her?
First, I'm French, so in France we study Joan of Arc at school. I don't know if you do in America, but we study her quite in depth. And also I was raised in a little town in France where just around the corner from where I lived, there was the ruins of this castle where the Inquisition happened. So I've always been fascinated by all the medieval times and all those religious history things that happened that were really that are not really contemporary nowadays. Religion is very different, but at the time, religion was power, and to me, that's absolutely fascinating how people behaved and what they did, and that's why Joan of Arc was always a very peculiar character, because she was a woman and she was a teenager, and she achieved things that only men were doing at the time. So it's kind of a fascination thing when you're a woman and you're French. I think pretty much probably every French woman in France is kind of fascinated by Joan of Arc.
Oh, so we could have you on for an hour talking about Joan of Arc. So I picked the first good topic for you coming on the show because it's awesome so far. And what question do you have next, Darcy?
I kind of want to know, in your research, what do you think was the most interesting thing that you found out about Joan of Arc?
To me, what was the most surprising to me is that when she first arrived in Orleans, when she first met the soldiers, what she did is that she banned all the women that were there, and then she made them go to church and confess and repent. And she basically, this little girl who was a teenager, she was 16, she stood up to all those big men who had been fighting for years, and then she put them back in the right order. And to me, that was absolutely fascinating. That's the thing that we didn't really learn at school, and that I thought was really showed what kind of character she had.
And also, Joan of Arc did a lot of sacrifice. She sacrificed a lot for her country, didn't she?
Well, yeah, she gave her life.
Right.
Right.
More than just that, Clara, in a way, meaning sacrificed through her faith and through certain situations, being so powerful, yet she really took herself to the people, right?
Yes, and I think honestly, I don't know. I'm not really a religious person, so I don't know if she really was sent by God, but I believe that she truly believed that she was sent by God, and that's why she had so much power, and she was, for her, it wasn't a difficult decision, because she just had to. For her, there was no other choice. She was told by God to go and do this, so she went and did it. And I think that's also why she won all the battles, because there was no doubt in her head. At no point did she think that she was going to fail, because she knew God told her she was going to succeed, so she did it.
Basically, Claire, that the situation was she gave up everything, all of her, comforts to fight for the country.
Well, she didn't really have any comfort, because she was a peasant girl. She was raised in the countryside, so she left her farm to go to battle, which is also something that's fascinating, because why would a teenager who was raised in a farm suddenly think that she would lead the army? It's one of the strange things and fascinating things about her. That she went on her own. She marched to see the heir of the throne, and then she fought to be able to speak to him, because at first they were saying no, they didn't want to see her, but she insisted, and in the end she managed to convince everybody that she was the girl to lead the army.
All right. So far, a really, really interesting discussion. We're talking to Claire Doden, that's playing Joan of Arc, and we're learning more about Joan of Arc and the amazing story of how she fought for her country.
Yeah, Claire, I really want you to kind of tell us a little bit more, too, about what you think. I mean, obviously, Joan of Arc is this incredibly inspiring individual who did so much, and we keep talking about how incredible she really is. I was hoping maybe, what kind of message do you think that younger individuals, especially students right now, should be getting from historical figures such as Joan of Arc?
Well, I think she showed everybody that you can achieve whatever you want so long as you just really go for it.
Yes.
Even when everything is against you. Because if you had told people before Joan of Arc, you had told people, well, a girl could lead the army and win, everybody would have laughed. Mm-hmm. Nobody would have believed it was possible, and she did it. Mm-hmm. So to me, it shows that with the power of your will, of what you really want, if you really want something, and if you really apply yourself to something, then you can achieve anything you want. Nothing can stop you. And I think that's a lesson we can learn from Joan of Arc.
And see, that's the great theme of people that have been successful. They've given up certain, and I mean comfort when I was talking about with Joan of Arc, meaning leaving the comfort of her house, meaning safeness, to go out there and give up everything for God, not marrying, not anything, but doing it for God and going out there and for her country, God and country in a way.
Absolutely, and it was extremely dangerous for so many reasons, not just because she was fighting, but also because she was a woman surrounded by men, so there was the risk of being raped. It was so brave what she did. It was incredibly brave. And I think that's also one of the reasons why people followed her, because it was so unexpected that she must have been sent by God, because otherwise, why would a girl do that?
Definitely. Mm-hmm. It's sent by God, and why would she do that? Exactly.
Yeah, Claire, I'm hoping maybe you can tell us a little bit more, too, about the actual episode that you're on with the Joan of Arc versus William the Conqueror. I was hoping maybe you could kind of touch a little bit on that experience for you.
Okay, so that for me was incredibly fun, because what they did is that we had a sword master who created an exact replica of her sword that was made especially for my height and my weight. So I got to hold that steel sword that was just incredible. And then we got to test the weapons. There was a sword, there was a cannon, there was a crossbow, and we were testing the weapons to see how they were performing. Because so far we could read a lot of things, but we didn't know how how well those weapons were working. So that's why they made some exact replicas, and then we put them in testing situations to see what they would do. And it was actually pretty scary because the sword is like, it cuts through anything, through leather, through anything, really like butter, and that made me really scared in a way. I realized that when you're in a battle with a sword, you can actually so easily get stabbed, and it was kind of scary.
Jeez. So, there weren't any accidents, were there? Are you okay?
No, there was actually no accidents. It was very safe on the set, but it made me realize how dangerous it actually is in real situations, because we watch it in films and things like that, and we don't actually realize how dangerous it is until you actually have it in your hand.
Right.
So,
and you think, if I make a bad movement, then I could actually kill somebody.
So
really easily.
Are you a weapons expert?
Yeah, I did a lot of training in sword fighting, but as I was saying, that all the training I did in sword fighting was with training swords. They were not sharp.
Okay.
That's the difference with the show, is that the weapons we had in this show were real and really sharp.
So,
and usually, in sword training, and when we do films and all that, they're fake weapons. They're not like the real thing.
Exactly. And when we're thinking about when you're using these weapons, it's amazing to know that that's how they did hand-to-hand combat. There weren't guns at this point in time, and that the way that they fought, it really is dangerous in a lot of ways to die by the sword than something that might be quick and painless.
And it's also very personal because you're really close with a sword. And it is really, the adrenaline was pumping, and I realized, it taught me a lot of things about myself as well doing this. It puts you in a situation that you would never be, nowadays we don't find ourselves in these situations, except obviously if you're in the army. But even the army nowadays, they have guns and all that. We don't fight with swords anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And Claire, how did you get your break? How did you end up being a movie star in a lot of ways, television star? How did that happen?
Well, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and it takes training, and like most actors, you get your auditions, and then I think one way to be successful, and I think it's true with anything, is to keep training and learning new skills. And I think when you have some special skills, then eventually you'll find a job that really will fit you. Like for me, this one, I could sword fight, and I'm French. I know about Joan of Arc, so when that job came on Dead Euphoria, I was the obvious choice. And I think it's true, whatever job you're doing, if you keep specializing and training and learning skills that other people don't have, then you will find that those skills will become useful one day.
That's so true. I mean, you have to differentiate yourself, and that's fantastic. Where can we find more information on you, Claire?
You can on my website. It's claire.bodin.net.
Claire, thanks again for coming on the program. I'll talk to your publicist because there's a lot more we could talk about with all the different things, teaching us how to use weapons. That's education, and I'm telling my producer
and
that.
It's fun, and let me tell you
it's
that.
Fun.
It's such a fun sport to sword fight.
So, see, I would enjoy that. I'm 6'10". How tall are you, Claire?
I am 5'6".
5'6". Okay. All right. Well, thanks again for calling the program, and we'll be in touch. Okay, Claire?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was Claire Doden, sci-fi star, Joan of Arc. You're listening to the Total Education Hour on the Total Education Hour.
Just imagine what a little time can do for your family. From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So you've got a song about where to call for government information?
Check this out. We got the benefits and services to make you smile, to get the answers you need. Put us on speed dial.
That is gold, Your Honor.
1-800-FIT-INFO.